What's up, Brooklanders? I'm reviewing The Nun. Let's do it. At its best, The Nun 2 is a fine, generic demon horror movie that we've seen before in the Conjuring universe, and at its worst, it's just nothing special. I will say that the goal of a good sequel is to improve upon the first, and I think that this does that. The only problem with that is that it doesn't improve enough to make this movie stand out, even in the Conjuring universe, but among all demon films. A good horror movie doesn't always have to reinvent the wheel, but what I think this one fails to do is stand out among its genre. But with that said, the movie isn't offensively bad. It's not a complete waste of time. There are some highlights here. I think in the character department, while a lot of these characters aren't going to go down in history as some of the best we've ever had, they are interesting, they are enjoyable, and they're strong enough characters to carry you throughout the movie. You're going to be interested in some of them, you're going to care about them, and it makes some of those high tension scenarios a lot more enjoyable. Not like enjoyable because you think they might die, but like better, you know? I think Thaisa Farmiga is a pretty solid lead, and it just sucks that we don't get more time with her because she is a very likable character. You're rooting for her. She feels like she has that nunly aspect of like, she seems revered, but also like normal and more approachable and not like one of these old, like, you know, Karens with the bookcases. And you have a few of those in this movie. She's a cool character, and while I was surprised to see Storm Reid pop up here because she's been absolutely everywhere and I'm cool with it because she's a good actress, I do feel like this character was a little underutilized, kind of reduced to like henchman towards the end. In the beginning of the movie, they introduced some interesting things about her, but they never really carried those throughout the end of the film to make this character again memorable. It's a Conjuring film, so you're going to get some jump scares, you're going to get things like that, and I feel a little conflicted on this because while it's not a jump scare galore fest where it's every 10 seconds, you know, sound drowns out, bam, jump scare, while it's not that and it's not as generic in the jump scare route, I still wouldn't say they're particularly good. In fact, I'd say the best scares of the movie aren't the jump scares. They're ones that are a little more creative. There's this one scene where the nun's just like, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm just gonna like give a little tease. It's a really quick match cut from the nun to like this thing on a wall. It's super interesting, and I feel like it really captures that side of a child's imagination to where you see some figure, some pattern on the wall that looks creepy and you think it might be, but maybe it's not. And I think that was one of my favorite scares of the thing. There's also this really cool moment with a magazine stamp I thought was super interesting and creative, and from a filmmaking perspective, I think I gotta give props to them for pulling it off. Overall, I'd say the story wasn't bad by any means, and the story is not bad. I follow through with saying that. And while the majority of the movie, the story was actually, it was good enough, you know, it was interesting, it was keeping me engaged, keeping me hooked with these characters, the ending kind of lost it for me, and the actual involvement of the nun herself. I think part of the issue with the Conjuring universe is sometimes they have these like gimmick villains that once they have the gimmick of like demon nun, they're not entirely sure how to follow up with that the best way possible, to the point where the nun isn't even really that involved in the story itself. Like, yeah, she's there, she's the one doing the possessing, but she possesses this guy and she takes the form of this and she takes the form of this. And sometimes I feel like the Conjuring universe doesn't have enough confidence in its main demon or something like that to carry the tension and the scares throughout the entire film, so they kind of backtrack and they get scared and they gotta rely on other things and possessions and this and more generic demon stuff we've seen 1,000 times. The ending, though, I'll admit, made me chuckle a little bit, where it's like, you know, people are getting infinity stones pretty much. It's like the Catholic demon infinity stone and the nun's Thanos, and once she gets her infinity stones, it's like, what the heck? And also, one thing I want to touch on in these movies, and a lot of demon movies, is the inconsistency of the power of God. Because sometimes, you know, like in Annabelle, the guy holds a cross at demon and the cross like explodes, right? And it's useless against this demon. And then other times you point a cross at them and it paralyzes them in their space. And then at the end of some movies, you know, let's say a prayer. Amen. Demons defeated. That's inconsistent, and I think the whole entire thing, it just makes it it just made the ending a little messy for me to enjoy. Like I said though, The Nun 2 is not a bad movie, but also unfortunately, it's nothing that I'm particularly going to remember and recommend to people. And I think a good like indicator of a good horror movie for me is, you know, you're hanging out with your friends, your family, and you're like, oh, let's turn on a horror movie. The good movies are the ones that you're like itching to show people. Let me get my family's reaction to this, my friend's reaction to this. The Nun isn't one I'm going to be in a rush to show. Maybe if people have seen all of the other ones, but there are a lot more movies I'd rather turn on than The Nun. Still not a bad film at all. I'm gonna give it like a 5.5. And here's where I'd place it on my tier list. Thanks so much. I make videos all the time. Check out my second channel too. I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers over there. Have a great day.